Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name's Warrabbit, and today we're going to be talking about how to fix Tau in 10th Ed. If you didn't already know, Tau have kind of been struggling through the entirety of 10th, and right now they are in a pretty bad spot. So, here are the problems with Tau in my opinion. The army rule is just not fun to play. It is a lot of hoops to jump through to get a marginal increase. That is a good increase, it's just not what we really need. The detachments may all be good or equally, they're all equally what would be the word, equally, they're all equal, but they all equally suck at the same time in that regard, unfortunately, where they all are all just bad. They're all balanced well, they're all just balanced poorly compared to the rest of the game. Most data sheets, outside of the core, aren't really taken. If you're not running if it's a specific detachment for crew, you're not taking any of the crew characters. If you're not running big bricks of crisis suits, you're probably not taking Farsight. You're never taking any of the Titanic models or the flyers. I think there's a argument for the Razor Shark, but other than that, you're not taking any of them. Strike teams aren't doing well. Crew rampagers aren't seen really outside of crew hunting pack or auxiliary cadre, stuff like that. And most of our data sheets are way overcosted for what they are, but realistically we don't want them to be any cheaper in points cost, because if you look at the points per dollar of the faction, it's one of the worst in the game, if not the worst. I think there's only one other faction that could compare, that's AdMech, and AdMech is notorious for how expensive it is. If you compare, I know AdMech has a thing with the Chicken Walkers, the Iron Shard, or Balisari. Compare that price to a broadside, and I think they're actually better points per dollar than a broadside. And the final issue is that we really lack this midfield melee threat that most armies have. Looking at, currently it would be like the 8-bound and world eaters are kind of a good example of just midfield threat that can hold their own for a while, that can go into melee and clear off chaff and then clear out screens and stuff like that. Tau don't really have that. If you have a midfield melee threat, you kind of just get pushed back as Tau. Yeah, you could charge in your Riptide, but you're charging a Riptide into something that's most likely going to be able to take a lot of wounds off it or outright kill it. The next thing is the backfield. We're not really getting, you could deep strike a crisis team, but you deep struck a crisis team in the backfield or a Vespid squad, and you're just not going to have that level of stuff you need, that you could just be, oh yeah, here's my, garbage unit that's going to charge into your backline guy. And Tau really don't have that in spades like other armies, and we could really use something like that. So here are my proposed changes for the army rule. If you look at the army rule, it's guided, and it's probably one of the worst army rules in the game. It's probably one I'm not thinking of right now. But we have a lot of penalties. Specifically, there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through, and there's a penalty, unlike pretty much every other faction in the game that has an army rule. So first change, remove the split fire penalty. It's ridiculous. We shouldn't have it. I don't know why it's literally been in the game the entire edition. Has always been a split fire penalty, and it makes no sense because you're buffing my ballistic seal just to nerf it because I want to be more efficient. The next thing is all data sheets do not have for the greater good. So Kroot, Vespid, and the Tidewall, they gave the ethereals for the greater good in recent updates. So it seems they're willing to give units that don't have it the army rule, and then obviously remove the exemption from fortifications because they're not good. So why are you nerfing them even more? They just give them a little bit of a bone, and you'd see probably won't see competitive play, but you'll definitely see casual play because people love their big models. And this presentation and video was all written and recorded prior to any of the leaks that I've seen so far. So if the leaks are true for the update, where it's just going to be your observer unit picks one enemy and then now your entire army acts as guided, that's a major change, and I can still definitely think everyone should get for the greater good to get that benefit. Even then, I don't even think that's enough, but realistically my proposed changes probably isn't good enough. It's just something, a light touch to hopefully we get. So Calion's pretty good. as I said, all detachments are equally bad, but they're still equal nonetheless. So the first thing is Calyon always gives sustained hits 1 the entire game, but you keep sustained hits 2 starting at turn 3 onwards on a spotted unit to try to keep that fairness, because sustained hits 2 is just a really good rule, as we saw with Mordaka. And if you give that to an entire army, it doesn't matter how bad the shooting is, it's going to be good. And then another change is realistically for Unit V Devastation, remove the leading unit clause and just let it have 3 unit devastation. So you can put it on single models that are able to just look at things and then be an observer and just give lethal hits to whatever they're leading, not leading necessarily, but what they're guiding. That should be good changes. I think Calyon's probably the better of the detachments, probably the best, most consistent one. There's probably some other changes you could do, but I'm not really thinking of them off the top of my head right now. So Mont Ka, same thing as Calyon, give assault the whole game, and then keep lethal hits on 1 through 3. Same thing, if there's a leader unit restriction, remove that restriction from any of the enhancements, specifically coordinated exploitation. It doesn't make sense that they have that restriction because it doesn't really do much for the unit. And it's like most of the time they're way overcosted for what they are, especially with when you have a restriction like that that's so heavy and problematic. So for stratagems, pinpoint counter offensive, it only restricts for Kroot, not even Vespid. So if you lose a Vespid, you can still use pinpoint counter offensive. So I don't know why Kroot can't have it. I get that they're trying to make it so, oh, if you throw Kroot hounds and they die, you should be able to get something from that. But you just remove that exception. It doesn't really make any sense, and it's just there to be problematic realistically, and to make Kroot not as good, which are already struggling. Not really struggling, but they're cheap and monetarily expensive when it comes to US dollars. So I should be getting more bang for my buck in that regard. And then most of the stratagems probably they're just way overcosted. Like Pulse Onslaught, that should not be 2 command points. Neither should counter fire defense systems. We have a problem with command point generation with the Tau, and 2 command point stratagems are just way too overcosted for what they are, and it's just ridiculous how there's just no way to consistently get your command points back in this faction like other armies. So Retaliation Cadre, it's probably the one I have no idea how you can realistically make better without just, as I show like examples, be Pure Tide Engram Chip. It should probably be 20 points. I think it's 25 right now. It's just ridiculous for what it is, you know. And then obviously Neurochip should probably be a -1 command point, similar to the Space Marine Captain. So it's just whenever you use a command point, it's just zeroed out. So you can get basically 1 free enhancement. One free command point ability stratagem on your unit whenever you want. That's probably the best idea for it. 25 points still is just way too much. And then again, I don't really know how to fix this other than just reduce the cost of enhancements. And the problem is that this attachment, if battle suits are good, this is gonna be a good attachment. If they're not good, it's gonna be a bad attachment. It's just there's just nothing you could really do. It's just a really swingy detachment. So if it swings one way, it's gonna be good in that direction. If it swings another, it's gonna be bad. So unless you make crisis suits or riptides and broadsides that's insanely good, this attachment's not going to be amazing. Kroot hunting packs is similar to Red Cadre. If Kroot aren't good, this attachment's not good. Root carved weapons should definitely apply to the bearers unit. Yeah, you're going to have like a 20 stack of Kroot getting the benefits of it, but does it really matter? It's just 20 pack of Kroot. You know, Join the Hunt should be 1 command point instead of 2. They got nerfed to be almost unusable, and it's like, okay, yeah, you still get like 100 points back when you resummon the Kroot squad. So probably a lot more than 100 points. I'm being dramatic in that regard. The detachment lacks advance and charge, as Cadre has. Auxiliary Cadre has advance and charge, so that could be a change to one of the stratagems. Because I know there's a few strats in Kroot hunting pack that you could use, but like they're kind of extremely situational. Other than that, again, if Kroot are good, this detachment's going to be good. If they're bad, they're going to be bad. So the goal realistically would to be buff Kroot and see what happens to the Kroot hunting pack. Auxiliary cadre is the best attachment when it comes to mixed armies. You want to do heavy crew, like half Tau units, half crew and auxiliary units. Probably one of the biggest changes, remove the Titanic restriction from the detachment rule. I understand that GW is very restrictive when it comes to Titanic models because they're not a mix of shooting and melee like all other Titanic models in the game, and they're just shooting. So having that extra AP on like a dozen plus guns is not something they want to be able to balance around, especially with how awkward Titanic models are when it comes to the ruins keyword and stuff like that for the general state of the game. So it's just a situation where I think Titanic is just being wrongfully punished for things that, Riptides, Storm Surges and Townars aren't really a problem. If my 800 model unit is doing well into the shooting phase, and that's the problem, I think there's a bigger problem at hand than that 800 point model. So for, again, enhancements could probably be cheaper points wise. I don't think they're rarely taken. Whenever I look at a Tau competitive list, they rarely take the enhancements for any of the attachments because they're just not worth it, to be honest. Fanatical Convert should probably rework to be giving the army rule, because the goal for the army rule is to be given to all units. So you wouldn't need Fanatical Convert, which is just giving the army rule to a single recruit unit. And one of my ideas would be just give it a marker light and the ability to spot 2 units like the Pathfinders. That could work pretty well, because if you think about it, like, oh yeah, you get an extra basically Pathfinder squad with your War Shaper or something like that. I guess you could also put it on a Lone Spear, but stuff like that could be useful. Experimental Prototype Cadre. This one is just, it's fun on paper. You think, oh, 6-inch range is really nice, but that's the whole rule for the detachment. You could probably add +1 strength to all range weapons, and that helps with meeting break points and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily too game breaking, but I can see an argument that it might be too much. And again, like, Tau are horrible right now. They're one of the worst armies in the game. So it's like, is +1 strength in all weapons in a detachment, is that really going to be something that's going to break the game when, Tau are notorious for just kind of being weak? The enhancements, they're just bad. They're all just bad. They buff one weapon and they give you a slightly better profile, and it's like, oh yeah, you want fusion blades and 20 extra points. It's like, is 1 extra shot on a commander for a fusion blaster worth 20 points, or a slightly stronger plasma rifle? Is that really that good? Like, that's just ridiculous. So of the 4 enhancements, I think the 2 best ones would be fusion blades and the thermoneutronic projector. Give them both melee profiles so that they're actually good. So like, yeah, I'd pay 20 points if I get, that extra shot on my fusion blade, and I get basically like 4 attacks of like a super power fist. I think that's 20 points. Thermoneutronic projector giving me that super flamer, and then also giving me basically this really nice ad clear. Like if you got that chaff clearing potential on like a Cold Star, like maybe I just run Cold Star by itself with that and just charge it in and stuff like that. That could be interesting. The plasma accelerator, I don't think having it just being a better plasma rifle is worth, I think it was like 15 points or 10 points. It's just not worth it. I think you should probably change it out for like something similar to like the repair drone. So my example repair drone just like give you, because you have the stratagem, you're not stratagems, you have stratagems that are causing mortal wounds due to the hazardous keyword. So we need more ways to heal our units because they're all taking more damage outside of actual damage. So being able to heal your models like D3+1 every turn without it being a command point would be super useful, especially if for larger models like Townars and Storm Surges. And it could be something to give it like a Tech Marine thing, where you start of your turn, you give a single friendly vehicle within 6 of 5 plus feel no pain. That could be really useful. You could probably make that 25 points, and then I'd probably take that every single time and throw it like on something with like a lone op, like throw it on a lone spear or a firesight marksman that just sits in the backfield, just healing up my stuff. That could be really useful. So Probably the next thing. So for data sheets, I definitely think that my objectives with the changes would be just all tile units need to become more efficient. And because they're being more efficient, they need to go up in points. And that's realistically to make it so that I don't have to spend a point per dollar. So like if I collect the 2,000 point list, it should not be $2,000 to collect, right? Tau used to be in 8th and 9th edition one of the cheapest armies to collect, and now they're the most expensive. So that's a huge whiplash in that regard that needs to be addressed by increasing points, by making things more efficient. I think Kroot, they are one of the worst points per dollar, model ranges in the game, and they definitely need to go up in points, but I need them to be a lot tougher and deadlier overall. So I just think it's ridiculous where you're paying like almost like, what was it, like 0.75 per dollar or something like that for a Kroot squad. I could be off on the points number, but it's bad. So for overall, I think the most data sheets need to go up 5 to 10 points. And I want things like Riptides to be 200 points. And to do that, I think your option would be to make the secondary weapons much more powerful, like plasma rifles, and smart missiles need to be stronger. I definitely think smart missiles should be a good indirect profile, not necessarily broken, but just good. So having like an extra AP or even a ballistic skill or ignoring cover could be really nice to deal with armies like Eldar or Guard that like to have fight outside of line of sight in that manner, like Eldar doing jump, shoot, jump. That's really difficult to counter as Tau because they just literally hold you. They'll be in the center of the board and there's just nothing you can do because they're jumping in and out of line of sight blocking terrain and you can't shoot back. So it's effectively indirect in that regard, at least against Tau. So starting with the data sheets, the first one of the Gotcha Fireblade, I think he's in a good spot. He just needs a little more damage so that he's worth, I think, what is he? 60 plus, was he like 60 points or 40 points? Yeah, if he's 50 points. He probably upgrade the pulse rifle to rapid fire too, and then let him attach with an ethereal in the same squad, because that could be really interesting to have an ethereal and a Cadre Fireblade in like a breach or a strike team. It just adds more survivability because the ethereal is more of a defensive unit than a damage one, so you're gonna have a slightly stronger breacher. That could be pretty interesting, while also keeping the breachers doing a ton of damage. And I'm pretty sure you can fit 2 characters in a breacher team and a devilfish, so that could be pretty useful. So next we're going to Farsight. He could probably be 100 points. I definitely think that, like with all plasma rifles, they need to be rapid fire 1. Rapid fire 1 plasma rifles isn't super amazing, but it's just half range. That's where Farsight wants to be. He wants to be up close and personal. You're getting 2 shots and you're getting 3 shots from rapid fire. So you get 3 shots, strength 8, AP 3. You're shooting basically a Thunderhammer, a Space Marine Thunderhammer every turn. And then you get it going with that attack profile. I think that should be good. And now the first major change for pretty much all battle suits is they need to go up in 1 in toughness. So I think toughness 5 on a battle suit is not good enough right now, especially with how weak battle suits are compared to some of the top meta armies. Like, yeah, like cool. I'm pretty sure 20 Poxwalkers can bring down a crisis team in 1 round of combat type of stuff. Like, obviously that's like a ridiculous math hammer thing, and it's probably not true, but stuff like that. Like if I get charged by an assault intercessor squad, toughness 5 isn't enough to stop them from taking out like double their points value in a single turn. So it might be because melee threats are efficient in melee, or crisis teams are too weak in melee. And I think it's the crisis teams are too weak to actually survive certain things. Next is melee attacks. You could probably leave it, but maybe AP3 and AP2 on his attack profile could be decent, because after AP2, AP3 is just kind of like, okay, you're already throwing pretty much everything on his invuln anyways, so like, is AP3 really necessary? That's just going to put non-invuln models on 6s for like Space Marines on the strike profile. So I don't know if it's necessary, but it could be a useful buff, especially if you're raising his points by 5. I think the Commander and Cold Star and Enforcer both need to go toughness 6 like all crisis dudes. I'd like to see ethereals and hover drones being able to attach to crisis teams with a commander, so that you get the crisis squad with the commander and an ethereal for a defensive buff. That could be useful, especially because, you know, ethereals right now are, you really only take them for command point generation, and even then I don't think they're that good. Obviously plasma rifles all need to go to rapid fire 1. That could be pretty interesting. It's just one of those things like, okay, well, like, why am I taking a plasma rifle instead of my missile pods when effectively the missile pods do slightly more damage, even though the plasma rifles are strength 8. It's not a major change. It's just something to average out the missile pod versus plasma rifle. The next thing is burst cannons and flamers. They're good, but I like them to be even better. It's just we just don't have, like, the win rate doesn't lie. Tower not doing enough damage to everything. They're just not hitting enough, I suppose. Like, yeah, it might be a durability issue rather than a damage issue, but we got to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. So burst cannons probably get one more attack. I was thinking sustained ones, but that might not be good. That might be too good. Flamers probably should get an extra 1 hit, so it's a d6 plus 1, similar to 9th edition, and then they were pretty good back then. I could definitely see commanders going up 5 to 10 points just with all these changes listed. I think if you do the toughness 6 and allow ethereals to be attached, I think that can make them go up 5 to 10 points. Shh, okay. Sorry, my cat's meowing. So Shadow Sun, she should probably be T5. T4, it doesn't really matter for her because she's not getting attacked anyways. Like, once Shadow Sun dies, your army's kind of, you pretty much lost already because she's all the way in the back line. I think even if you buff her 100 points, if she goes more than 100 points, even with buffs, I think she's just not worth it. Yeah, that reroll 1s to hit's really nice, and that's why, like, if it's kind of like a Lord Solar or Leontis situation before the Guard Codex came out. If you nerf Lord Solar, you're just kind of making the army overall bad rather than just making him worse. So she's just a kind of a crutch in that regard in this moment. She could probably have a better melee profile. That could be interesting, like an extra AP and 1 attack and weapon skill 3. She in the lore, she's a decent melee combatant, so just give her basically a slightly stronger, give her a stronger chainsword attack profile. Basically could be pretty nice. So Dark Strider, he's rarely used, if ever. I know he had some really janky movement techs and shenanigans, so that's pretty interesting, but he's just kind of there. I could definitely think his shade attacks should just be better. You know, AP 1 extra AP on it would be nice, and then rapid fire 1 could be interesting. I could definitely see him going up 10 points to give him lone op. If you just give him lone op, make him go up 10 points, I think he's good. A lone op with jammer array for 70 points, that's infiltrators with Primaris Librarian, or I think it's either it's in Phobos, if I remember correctly. That's the one. That is probably worth 70 points. I'd probably take him every game, just so you can have him in the backfield to stop like random shenanigans with those like 6-inch deep strikers dropping in. That could be really useful. So the ethereal probably needs an entire rework. You know, he's in a bad spot. His failure is not an option ability is nice, and his regen command points is nice, but it's not good enough. So letting him, when he's on a hover drone, he should be able to join crisis teams, right? Because that's kind of the whole point of the hover drone, was that it was introduced so that he can move around with the crisis brick so that he can keep up. So I think going back to the 9th ed, invocation of elements, pick 2, you know, from 4 abilities, similar to like the Primarch abilities where you pick 2 from 3. He's supposed to be the faction leader. You know, he's the ethereals are the actual de facto leaders of the Tau, even though Shadow Sun is the overall ground command. She listens to the ethereal council, not the other way around. Sets of Stones, the same as failure's not an option. 5+ feel no pain. Zephyr's Grace for a crisis team could be really interesting. Advanced shoot and charge would be really nice to throw on a crisis team that you put an enforcer in. instead of a cold star, so that you get a little bit cheaper points wise, and then you still get all the benefits of a cold star. Calm the Tide CP regen should be on a 2+ or a 3+ instead of a 4. I think 4+ is just too swingy. And then I believe I saw a leak from the new balanced data slate saying that it's going to be, you roll a leadership test. If I have to roll a leadership test to even get the chance to roll on a 4+ to get a command point back, I'm never taking this unit again. I would say if Calm the Tide should just be gain 1 CP a turn, and then you got to do the leadership test, because this is a 6+ leadership test. Like that's ridiculous. That's almost a 50% chance of not getting. So I'll be roll 250% chances to even get 1 command point. There's just no point. If this thing was 10 points, it wouldn't be worth it. Stormify, reroll 1s to hit and wound on a range attack. That could be pretty interesting. Throwing that on a crisis team, so you effectively don't need to be guided with a stealth team anymore. Should probably be 60 points if you do all these changes. And then the final one, because ethereals in the lore are the best melee combatants in the Tau Empire. They should have decent melee attacks. They should be 4 attacks, weapon skill 3, strength 6, and AP 1 or 2 damage. So it's basically just a power sword, and just make, like, yeah, you charge into my crisis team, I have a decent power sword to wipe out your, Hormagon squad or something like that. Just pick up like 2 or 3 of them. I think Ethereal should be doing it, especially at 60 points. Like, if I'm paying 60 points for something, it better be somewhat decent, or because, like, is an Ethereal worth more than like a Crude Hound squad or something like that? And that's an argument that has to be had when you're dealing with Ethereals. Fire Strike team, he's way overcosted for what he is right now. I think if you change the way the certain enhancement works, where it's for leading a unit instead of just being a character, that'll make him a lot better, especially because he already has innate lone op. I think you should probably change his ability to high powered marker light, which is you pick a single enemy unit and then your entire army is effectively guided on that. That just makes it a cheaper Pathfinder squad on most targets, because targeting, excuse me, there's a cat feeder going on, I apologize. Effectively it's the same as a Pathfinder squad. So because the Pathfinder squad's going to guide twice into a big guy. Like if you're targeting a knight, an Imperial Knight, and you have a Pathfinder, you're going to be guiding twice into 2 of your models that can shoot into that guy. So it's effectively the same thing. I don't think the sniper drones need a buff. The long shot pulse rifles, yeah, you could probably buff them, because they're supposed to be like things that are like in the lore, they're capable of killing a Carnifex in 1 shot. So it's like, should they be las cannons? Should they not be las cannons? I don't know. I think it's fine, but it's not. It's just kind of there. So strike teams compared to breachers are horrible. I think breachers are fine. Strike teams are useless. You could probably drop breachers back down to 90 points and they'd be in a good spot. Strike teams, the goal would be 80 points. So you do that by giving pulse rifles rapid fire 2. That's just a general huge buff. So 3 shots at 15, that's pretty good. Pulse carbines on drones are assault. Why are they not assault on strike teams? The Shade on Darkstrider is a pulse carbine. It's got assault. Why doesn't it have assault on this? They're not as good as a pulse rifle, to be honest. Like, they're 20-inch. Like, compare, I'm pretty sure the breachers have assault on their guns. So it's like, it's just there. I could be wrong on the breachers. The support turret should probably be BS4, because you're technically now it's not being shot by a drone, it's being shot by the Shazui. It should be BS4. It's just a missile pod. A strength 5 missile pod is that really that good. Now the next thing I think you could probably do is keep suppression volley, but for strike teams, but do what the intercessors have, where you get double shots if targeting the same unit. And I think that would probably make them 90 points if you keep all the changes. If you just give them the intercessor double shot, I could see 80 points. I like the double shot. That's a lot cooler in my opinion, especially if you keep suppression volley. But if you change out suppression volley, probably keep it 80. Pathfinders, they're probably the top 3 units in the army outside of stealth suits and maybe crisis suits, or actually Shadow Sun, to be honest. You take at least one every list. If you're not taking one, you're kind of out of luck. So the way you buff them, obviously, is pulse carbines give them assault so they can shoot. Rail rifles and ions should be BS4, but they keep heavy. These guys are supposed to be like the front end, somewhat elite models compared to normal fire warriors. They should have decent shooting. And you're moving them all the time, so you're never going to be standing still, so you're never going to get the benefits of that heavy, especially because you have to move to get lines of sight to get them to guide, and they're going to be picked up almost immediately. The drone burst cannon, probably make it 5 shots. It's staying BS. It's going to stay, BS5, and it's just 6 shots at BS5, maybe 4. If you're never going to get guided as a drone because you're the ones doing the guiding, so there's just nothing you can do. So it is what it is. Other than that, I think it's just a good unit overall. There's not much you can do. I think keeping it 90 points is fair. So yeah, by far the most useful and best unit in the codex is definitely stealth suits. Stealth suits are just you take them in doubles or even triplicate. You're most likely taking them triplicate, to be honest, because you need guiding. The burst cannons should probably get 1 or 2 more shots. I think 1 should be fine. 5 attacks on 2 of your models is pretty nice. You probably don't need AP on their melee attack, but giving them weapon skill 4 should be fine, because they are in a battle suit that makes them faster. So like the non-battle suit units, non-battle suit Tau that aren't in a battle suit shouldn't have weapon skill 4. They should be weapon skill 5, but if they're in the battle suit makes them faster and makes them see better, so they should be weapon skill 4. 6-man teams are pretty much never taken because they're just not cost effective. So if you make the 6-man a little cheaper, maybe 110 or even 100 points, should make a 6-man more enticing for like an actual damaging unit rather than just being a guiding machine. But you're probably still going to take them as a guiding machine. If you make the 3-man about 5 points more, so it makes them 65, because they're the best unit in the codex. And so you get the 65, and then a 6-man team will be 100. So it's like, okay, well, I can get double the damage for like 30% more. Is that, sorry, not 30%, 50% more points? Is that worth it, or so forth? And I definitely can see it, but you probably still take the MSU, because you're never going to be taking more than 3-man units. So that should just be adjusted. Devilfish doesn't really need adjustments. It's decent. The pulse carbines on the Devilfish have assault, but Pathfinders and strike teams don't, which is always kind of funny to me. You could probably make it 90 points if you make SMS ridiculously good, like ignores cover and AP1. That'd probably be a 5-point increase on every single model that can take SMS. I kind of wanted to say you could probably make them BS3 so they always hit on 4s, even with the indirect. But then you have to, if you be hitting on 2s, if you guide into something that's not indirect, so that could be a problem. So I don't really know if you should do that. The increasing the ballistic skill probably isn't needed, but I could see it, but it's probably not needed. You could probably make them toughness 10. I don't know if you should, because T10 is a huge breaking point for strength 5 weapons. So that could be really useful. So fortifications are probably the Tau fortification is probably the only fortifications in the game that can be made somewhat viable in all play. So competitive and casual alike. If you give them move 7, it's just it beats walking motive. Like I think they're move 4 right now, and it doesn't beat walking. So what's the point? If you add an ability that they had in previous editions, that if you have a unit embarked in them, all of their weapons get +1 to hit, that would be really good. That make them viable on their own, even without the move change, right? So you can actually throw down your, gun rigs that instead of hitting on 4s, hitting on 5s, they're hitting on 4s. You should remove the restriction for the greater good and give them for the greater good. So if you have that +1 to hit, you're now hitting, instead of a 5, you're hitting on a 3. and then the drone port will just have an insane number of shots hitting on 4s. I could see them also getting dedicated transport because they're meant to have stuff embarked inside of them. There's supposed to be stuff inside of them to move them around and stuff like that. That could be some interesting movement shenanigans, just throwing this massive model in the midfield that even if you charge into it, is not, you can't take the objective from it. Even with all those changes, they probably shouldn't go up in points, but I could definitely see like a 5-point or even a 10-point increase if you make all those changes. Broadsides should be T7. I don't know why they're T6. I did not realize broadsides are T6. I'm pretty sure Iron Striders are T7, and they're the same points cost, or not the same points cost. They're the same price. They might actually be the same points cost. Same changes to plasmas and smart missiles. Plasmas get rapid fire 1, smart missiles get ignore cover and extra AP. Maybe an increased ballistic skill because they're supposed to never miss type of stuff, so it is what it is. Yeah, if you compare a broadside to an Iron Strider, broadsides kind of get smoked. I don't know why they did this. There was like a argument in like Monca or something about having broadside missile sides in a 3-man was too efficient at 270 points, and I have no idea why they made that argument, because even when they were too efficient at 270 points, Tau was still sitting at like a 44% win rate. So clearly it wasn't good enough, and I think they just didn't want to have broadsides to act like AdMech Iron Striders, where they're just like, you're taking 3 of these you're taking 3 units of 3 every single game because it's the only thing. So maybe it wasn't an efficiency issue. Maybe it was they just want to have the same list in every detachment. But overall, yeah, make them go back to 270 points. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they made that change. Crisis suit teams, add 1 to the toughness to all crisis suits. There's no reason that they should be T5 anymore. I think there's just been too much of power creep overall in the faction for them not to be toughness, not in the faction, the game, to not be toughness 6. Plasma rifles, again, rapid fire 1. Add 1 to shoot 2 shots to the burst cannons like all the other burst cannons. Make flamers, add an extra guaranteed hit so that you're getting a lot more damage out of them. I definitely want Star Sights to be the army's best horde clear. If they're not, there's kind of no point, to be honest. Battlesuit Fist should be weapon skill 4/5, and then maybe give them an AP so they have like a diet chain sword attacks, you know? So that'll just make it so that they can clear, you know, guard squads or something off of an objective instead of the guard squads potentially wiping the squad in melee for some ridiculous reason. And obviously the goal is to increase the points by 10 because they're $84 for 3. Like why do we have these dirt, like it was like 110 points for $84? That's ridiculous, and they need to be a lot more. Ghost skills, I think you gotta raise the points by 10. It's in a good spot right now, even without at 160, and it's just okay. I definitely think the cyclic should be 1 more strength on both profiles, because I'm pretty sure the cyclic Iron Raker is the same strength as the cyclic Ion Blasters that the commanders can get, but it gets more shots. So yeah, definitely be strength 8 and 9. That's a good break point, especially when you're targeting things that are the strength 8 on the normal will make it so that the standard fire can go in the toughness 4 relatively easily, and strength 9 makes it so you can wound toughness 9 vehicles on 4s instead of 5s. The fusion blasters, I think the twin linked fusion blaster thing, having 1 shot on this is just one of those times where it's like, man, why is this fusion blaster only 1 shot instead of 2? It should definitely have 2 shots because there's 2 fusion blasters. I understand they have like the twin links, so you get full rerolls to wound, but it's just one of those things. It's like, man, why? Melee, all the big battle suits should have decent melee. Not really super good melee, but decent. I think the melee attack should go to 4 attacks instead of 3. Weapon skill 3. Strength 6 is fine. AP 1, keep it 2 damage. That's nothing. You know, that's like asking for a drop in the bucket realistically. Compared, like, okay, cool, you can pick up 1 intercessor, you know, every turn, or like 1 or 2 intercessors every turn if you charge into them, you know, and then making it toughness 10 is huge for breakpoints. Like 8 and 10 is kind of being 8, toughness 8, toughness 10. There's really no difference between 8 and 9 other than, strength 9 weapons, but making them toughness 10 is really important. You probably don't need to do it, but definitely should, especially if you're raising by 10 points. To Riptide, my goal is 200 points. I don't think the Riptide should just... The Riptide is basically a big Space Marine Dreadnought, or even just the same size as the Space Marine Dreadnought that does less. The ability kind of sucks. I don't know how you change it. I was thinking of removing it to be the old Nova Charge, where you pick between like a 3-up invuln or being able to move around and in the charge phase or something like that. That could be interesting, but I think you just leave Devastating Wounds and just, you got to do something else. Giving the Heavy Burst Cannon 2 more attacks could be really interesting, but I doubt they're going to do it. But it's something I could say. Ion getting the +1 strength is always important. I think the vehicle Ions should be strength 8 and 9, and then you get that strength 10 on the Ion Accelerator for the stratagem in experimental weapons, and that would strength 11 on your overcharge is really interesting. T10 is a must for the Riptide. It has to be toughness 10. I think if you'd say like the ghost skill is currently toughness 8, you could probably do T9 for the ghost skill, to be honest, but it's got to be T10 for the Riptide. There's no reason not to. I'd even say toughness 11, but that I think that's pushing it. Smart Missile, same buffs, Again, Fusion Blaster should be 2 shots as well as the ghost skill. Melee again should be weapon skill 4, AP1, or maybe even AP2, to be honest, because it's a Riptide, man. Like, this thing's massive comparatively to what it's going to be charging into. But yeah, 6 attacks is fine. I definitely want to see the big battle suits actually have decent melee. Piranhas, they're probably our best harassment unit, and I really don't know how you change them. Raise points for 1/5 could be decent, and then the 2 and the 3 just reduce them by a similar amount. So like if you have 2 piranhas, reduce it by 10, so it'd be 110 points, and then 3's 160. But they have higher toughness than a broadside. Like, that's ridiculous. Why are broadsides not T7? Like, broadsides, I'm pretty sure, are physically bigger than a piranha. But I think they're fine in what they're at. I think they're decent durability. Their weapons are okay. I think you could probably add 2 more attacks on the burst cannon. That should be fine. The Melta, it's fine. They're $42 for one. Okay, so these things should definitely be probably 65 points, because again, the points per dollar is obnoxious with Tau, and I definitely want it to go up in points because I don't want to spend $42 for something that's only 60 points in the game. Buying 3 of these things doesn't even get me, a tenth of my army. So Hammerheads definitely want to be 150. Their burst cannons add 2 shots. Carbines get assault. SMS, same changes. I don't know if they should be T11 because you look at similar armies and they have T11 tanks. Like Lehman Russes are 12, Vindicators are T11. Like, is a Hammerhead a Vindicator? I'm pretty sure Rhinos are 10. So like, is the Hammerhead at 10? Weapons wise, the Ion Cannon should probably get 1 more strength. This is what it is, but definitely add 5 points if you're going to be buffing the little guns like that, because the little guns are kind of what's going to be making this vehicle a lot better. But yeah, Hammerhead's just in a good spot overall. Especially with the railgun's just always going to be good, but it's super swingy. And I'm like, I don't want to say ignore invuln, because once you ignore invulns again, we get back to the 9th edition issue where, then you're going to get, my gun ignores invulns. Well, I got super invulns. So I got a super ignore gun, super invuln ignoring gun. So it just creates an arms race when you get ignore invulns. So it's just not going to work. Skyrays, it's just, in my opinion, better than the Hammerhead. I could definitely see it going to 145. All the little guns get the same changes that all the other little guns were getting. I could definitely see T11. I definitely think the Skyray is the weaker, like toughness wise, I think. Like when I think of a Hammerhead's this big punchy tank that's kind of there to be going toe to toe. Like, yeah, it's a movement based tank, so you're dodging shots, but the Hammerhead in my head canon's got a slightly better armor because it's got the bigger gun arrays. But Definitely T11 for the Hammerhead, maybe T11 for the Skyray. Again, increase it by 5 points, maybe even 10 if the little gun changes are just too good. So we're on the Titanics. Titanics are the funny big stompy robots that are objectively bad. I think with a lot of the changes, Storm Surges could probably be kept at 400 points. I don't see why you'd lower them because if you lower them, they got to be like 375, and that's a 25-point swing. So like lowering it by 5 points is nothing. Like it's not gonna, like, oh, 395. Like I don't really care about a 5-point decrease on a 400-point model. It's not gonna matter. So split fire change and the Titanic restrictions again on the detachment and the army rule should make it be good overall. I definitely think all the other changes I'm talking about here probably would be too much. Add 1 or 2 shots to the burst cannons. Same thing, all the little gun buffs. Melee is a big thing. It's ridiculous how the Riptide has basically more attacks and not necessarily a better profile, but just more attacks is kind of funny. Weapon skill 4, AP2 on the attacks, and then add another attack. I think maybe add the other attack, but like, yeah, the Storm Surge doesn't really matter. But if it hits you, it should just delete whatever little dude it's attacking. T12, I definitely think a Storm Surge should be T12. I don't understand why it's not a T12. Is a Lehman Russ, right, higher in toughness than a Storm Surge? You know, like it's kind of like that question. And then probably the Hail Mary change, this and the Town R, I think should get the Battlesuit keyword. But that would be like, I think you add 50 points to both models if you do that. That's kind of how good of a change that is. I know it sounds like all 50-point change is ridiculous, but it's probably not 50 points, so it might be exaggerating there, but it's definitely a major change in that regard. Town R is probably kept 700 points with the split fire Titanic removal. That's a 90-point drop because the Town R is just bad. It's just not good. Like I have one, I love him, and he's just not good. If you buff the little guns, I'd still keep him at a 700-point model. I can see 750 if you also buff the melee. If you buff the melee to 8 attacks, weapon skill 4, AP2 2 damage, he's going to have a big tank shock, and he's going to have actually some decent melee that would make him comparable to a knight, an Imperial Knight, because he's almost 800 points. Like the only other model that I know that's comparable is a Stompa, and the Orc Stompa was I'm pretty sure it's a Stompa. It might have been, no, yeah, it's the Stompa, the one that's in the Codex, or is a Stompa Forge World. I'm pretty, the Stompa, the Orc Stompa is 800 points, and it just a better Town R. Like it was ridiculous how much better the Stompa is. So if you add the experimental weapons cadre and you give him a repair drone, and you don't remove the district, if you don't have like the repair drone stratagem for experimental weapons be battlesuit only, he'd be in a good spot. You know, I can definitely see 750, but if you give him the battlesuit keyword, definitely keep him at 790. I think if you give them battlesuit, do all the changes I said, you could probably keep him at 790, even make him 800 points just to keep that even 800. I think that would be really good for this model. But 700 points just for the split fire restriction changes and Titanic restriction removal, I think that could be a 700-point model. If you buff the melee weapons, probably 700 is still okay. Little gun 700, but if you give him battlesuit and you do all the other changes, I think 750 would be a good sweet spot. So flyers, I don't know how to balance them. You know, you're just never gonna get. Games Workshop doesn't care about flyers right now. The only one that I think sees any potential competitive use is the Razor Shark. Sun Sharks are meh. I don't know what to do to fix them. Manta is just, it's the Manta. Like it's like, oh, how are you gonna balance a Warlord Titan? It's like it doesn't matter. Obviously all the little gun changes is good. The Sun Shark is again just awkward. Tiger Shark got nuked from orbit for no reason, just because, you know, I think there was like one list that did well with the Tiger Shark in Games Workshop. Like, no, that's ridiculous. We can't have Tiger Sharks in the game. Like that's just something you keep on the shelf. Without any actual core rules changes, I just don't see any of these data sheets other than the Razor Shark. And even then, that's like there's a highly situational, and there's just nothing you can do about it. So now we're getting to auxiliaries. So Vespids, I don't think they really need to change. Definitely they should have 2 attacks because they got 2 arms. Why don't they get 1 attack? The 10-man should probably be a little cheaper than the 5-man because you're not seeing 10 mans, you're only seeing 5-man. So like if I want to take a big 10-man squad, I shouldn't be punished for it. And not really punished, but I shouldn't be disincentivized by that. Flamers obviously should get the flamer buff, so just give them an extra basically shot or 2. And I think that'll be in a good spot. Again, I think Vespid should have 2 attacks because then that kind of keeps them in line with the Kroot. And it's like, it's 10 attacks on the charge, weapon skill 4, strength 4. So it's like you get basically 10 chainsword attacks, and that kind of makes them like a Catachan squad. And they're the same points as a Catachan squad with less survivability. So Kroot are interesting that the only reason I say you got to buff them is because they cost their points per dollar is just so bad that they need major changes. So overall, we got to make them more stronger. They got to be made stronger, and they got to be more durable while increasing their points by a lot, probably 10 to 15 points, even maybe 5 to 10 would be a better sweet spot, but 10 to 15 is probably the goal. Again, it's worse. And now the Kroot are the backbone of most Tau lists because they're the only thing that we send forward to capture objectives and screen. You're not screening with your breachers. You send your breachers forward to just delete something, then die. Kroot are the thing. They're the things actually doing the job of objective holding. You might throw a Riptide or something on an objective to try to duke it out in the midfield, but if you get charged by Chaff and it's your Riptide, that's pretty much like the Riptide's just tied up the whole game. There's nothing you can do. Like you can move away, but you're losing the shooting of the Riptide, and there's just a lot of issues with using that instead of Kroot. Kroot are Kroot hounds being sent into your backfield to stop 6-inch deep strikes and stuff like that. That's basically what Kroot are doing. Most meta armies can just clean up your Kroot screen and then charge in the same turn without any issues. And if you make them more durable, then yeah, you can't. It's going to be hard. Like your Eldar is still going to be able to clear off your Kroot and then charge anyways. But it's going to be harder for like Death Guard to do that or World Eaters to do that because they have more incidental shooting than that. But I can definitely see Kroot being a little tougher, being a major boon to the Tau. So Kroot characters, I don't know whether or not T4. Like I understand that Kroot probably should, the design philosophy is T3, but Kroot are physically stronger than humans, and like the average human in Eldar is physically weaker than a Kroot. Like Kroot can go toe to toe with Space Marines in 1-on-1s. They can go in the lore. They're known to beat orcs in hand-to-hand combat just by overpowering them with certain, Kroot in general. When they eat orcs, they get physically bigger and stuff like that. I could see them getting an extra attack and AP to all their melee weapons. I don't know why the Lone Spear has a 5+, but all the Foot Kroot characters don't have a 5+ save. Maybe it's because it's on a giant lizard. So like, I guess giant lizards add 1 to your armor save, but it's just got to be what it is. I think if you make all those changes, 5 to 10 point increase, probably a 5 is better. If you buff Kroot, you're going to make Kroot Hunting Pack and Auxiliary Cadre insanely good. So it's just that kind of push and pull in that regard when it comes to balancing, but I definitely want the Kroot characters to be better because they're pretty much never seen outside of Kroot Hunting Pack. Lone Spear, I want to say increase him to T6 to match the Kroot toughness increase. I want his long gun to be basically a las cannon, but just a little weaker. So just add an attack, 2 or 3 strength, and it's fine. I think a slightly weaker las cannon could be really interesting for Kroot, because Kroot in general don't have that anti-tank option they need for Kroot Hunting Pack. So that'd be really interesting to see, having the Lone Spear in the backfield. And to be honest, that when you shoot with the long gun and you miss, it feels bad because then you don't get your advanced scouting to get rerolls hits on your Kroot when they charge in, or just shoot in general. But I guess you can use the blast javelin, but you don't want to be close range because your Kroot Lone Spear is lone op, so you're trying to push that around. You probably need to buff the blast javelin, but I don't think you need to, because I think maybe just add more range to it would be better. So it's just kind of that. I think he should be 90 points. Maybe make the melee a little better. I don't know how you do it. Maybe add an attack or AP on the close combat weapon, or and then make the Calamander just kind of more annoying or something like that. I don't really know. I think the Lone Spear is probably the one Kroot character that's in a good spot. I definitely wanted to have Last Cannon, so that'd be an interesting change to kind of make it like a Iron Strider in that regard. So Kroot Carnivore is the basic troop choice for the Kroot. As with all Kroot, they should probably get an extra toughness. You can't, like, shooting las guns should not clear out my Kroot. Make it harder for you shoot las volleys to take them out. That's just a good enough that going to toughness 4 is a huge break point, because it makes bolters weaker to them, it makes las guns weaker to them, it makes all the stuff that kills them easily now harder to kill them, and that's exactly what we want. I don't know if they need an extra attack and AP, but having one on them could be nice. Probably don't need it, because, like, again, I don't care about their gun. It's incidental shooting. You're never gonna, like, I don't think Kroot Carnivore shooting should be like this end all be all. The Kroot Carnivores are already good. They just need durability increase. I think increasing the points cost for 10 to 70 with T4 is really good. I think that's a good change, but keeping the 20 models at 130 instead of increasing the points cost by, to 140 is okay. So that Kroot hunting pack just doesn't get destroyed if this is the only change they make. Because at T4, I don't think these big bricks are really that crazy. I think a 5+ save could be good, but, like, it's like, yeah, you're basically getting a 33% increased save option, but, like, most attacks, they don't care anyways, and you got stealth, so it's like, there's just an argument there to be had. Fartstalkers are the elite Kroot, basically, so they should be T4 like all the other ones, but keep the Hounds at 3 because they're just dogs. They should definitely have a 5+ save. I don't know why they don't have a 5+ save for the little Kroot guys. The Ladaxi Tribalist, the little crossbow, should be BS4. I don't know why it's not. I understand that they're trying to keep the change to heavy was, if you stand still you get that benefit instead of if you move you get a negative, but Tower just, like, they constantly want to be moving because they're a movement army, and if you get rid of their movement to make them shoot a little better, like, it's not worth it. So just keep it BS4 and remove heavies, probably okay, because they're getting for the greater good. So all their ranged weapons are actually going to be better. They should get an extra AP on their attacks, and maybe even extra attack for all their attacks. So, like, the close combat weapons should be AP1, 3 attacks. Their Ritual Blade for the Kill Broker should be 4 attacks, AP1. Because, again, these guys are the elite Kroot, and make them 90 points. Like, at 90 points, they'll be competing a lot with Breachers and their anti-infantry game. And that make them basically the equivalent, not really the equivalent of a Breacher, but, like, close to a Breacher in damage profile. Especially because they have infiltrators and they have stealth. So it just makes them really interesting. And then you add on a Pekra, and he gets ignores cover on their unit, so it just adds in to make these guys a little bit. I know that they could probably be taken now without any changes, but they should definitely be T4. Kroot Hounds stay the same, maybe strength 4 attacks. I don't know. I think they're fine at 40 points. I think they're $20 or maybe they're $30, but yeah, I don't know how these guys are just things you throw forward to die. So, like, I don't really know what you're supposed to do here. It's like, oh man, how do you buff Ripper Swarms or Nurglings? It's like, you can't really do much. Kroot Rampagers, they're probably fine at T6. I don't think they should be T7. Definitely T6 is fine. Their extra attacks should probably, on the range, just give them one more shot. I think that'll be fine because, it does nothing. 90 points is probably good. Keep the 6 at 170. I think letting them charge through walls would probably be the only change you'd need to just raise the Tau win rate to 45% or even 50%. Just let them charge through walls. If you did that, I think that Tau just don't have that melee threat. And if you gave these things struggle to get into melee because they can't go through ruins, but if you let them burst through walls, that's it. There's nothing you can stop them. It changes the entire matchup into Tau because you have these Crutox Rampagers that are going to be slingshot and auxiliary quadra. Auxiliary quadra probably have like a 60% win rate if you let them charge through walls. And I saw the leaked or like released teaser for the new like casual stuff with like the Ruinscape, where all of your units that can't normally go through walls can go through walls. I think people just don't understand how good Crutox Rampagers are when it comes to that. So it's going to be pretty good because they're basically 8-bound, not really basically 8-bound, but they're like the equivalent of Tau 8-bound, and 8-bound can go through walls, and then these guys can't. You probably give them extra wound if you're adding 5 points. But other than that, yeah, just letting them charge through walls would probably be a 5-point, maybe even a 15-point increase on a 3-man. I think if you did that, it'd just be too good. And I think you probably raise them on that. So I don't really know how to keep that balance. And this is like, oh, well, I don't think that'd be too good, but I definitely think that might be too good. I think Crutox Riders are fine. Their weapons are kind of meh. They're just kind of exist to be this cheap model in the backfield that we don't normally have access to. And it's just tough. It's just tough enough to be annoying to kill. They probably should have a 4+ save because they don't have stealth. Like, yeah, like they don't have stealth. They should have a 4+ save, or just give them stealth and keep them at a 5+. I think their points costs are fine. Their rider should probably get an extra melee attack. Maybe. Extra wound again is a maybe. I think repeater cannons should be an extra attack and just treat them as like a souped up auto cannon. But they already have wet rapid fire too, so there's that argument. Tangle cannon is supposed to be like this super heavy grenade launcher, so like having that extra AP to keep up with the repeater cannon could be nice. But other than that, I think he's just a good little guy for what he is. He's a cool model, which is a shame because he's is what it is. But they have the design philosophy where I think it was like, oh, 3-mans are only 90. You get triple the shots for only double the price, for a 3-man. So that's kind of was my thought process on all the other multi-model units. So conclusion, Tower just are not in a good spot. And they're either the worst or bottom 3 armies in the game, and there's just no real argument against that. I don't think there's a way to fix them with points reductions, because again, they're the most expensive or the second most expensive army to collect on the game, depending on the list. Like there's just every single list you collect with Tau, no matter if it's hyper competitive or casual, is going to be extremely monetarily expensive. Like you can take all big battle suits and that'll still be like $1,000-$1,500. If you take a full competitive, like all battle suits crisis team and Ret Cadre, that's like $2,000. If you take a full crude army, that's $2,000. So it's kind of bad where my argument is hey man, this is the same argument we had with AdMech, where AdMech's costing $2,500 to collect for a standard 2,000 point army. That's not even competitive. So we need to make changes to that, because I think GW's just been too greedy when it comes to pricing these types of things. So my ultimate goal was, again, to give Tau good enough buffs that offset a 5 to 10 points increase on all their units without making them feel bad when 10% of the army is taken away due to points changes, And then hopefully GW makes at least 10% of the changes recommended in this video, and just to show that they're trying, because like the last 2-3 updates, all we got was a big fat none. It's like, oh yeah, well, Tau are really struggling, so we need some changes, and then GW says, oh, have none. But who knows, maybe they just make the Manta 5 points cheaper. So thank you all for watching. If you like the content, give it a like. I really appreciate if you subscribe. If you have any other ideas on how to fix the Tau, leave it in the comment section. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.